All right, so let's jump right in. We all know Sir Francis Bacon, right? The father of the scientific method, the guy who taught us how to really rigorously investigate the world out there. But what if he took that same incredible method and turned it inward? Not to the cosmos, but to the inner one. What if he actually wrote a guide to consciousness itself? Well, that's what we're going to explore today, what that guide might have looked like. It's a hypothetical manuscript, and we're calling it the Luminous Glass. I mean, it's a pretty wild question when you stop and think about it. Could the same person who completely changed how we see nature, could he have also left us a blueprint for understanding our own inner nature? You know, like a scientific method for the soul. Let's just imagine for a second that he did, because that's exactly the journey we're going on today. So we know for a fact that Bacon spent his life just picking apart the flaws in human reason. It's what he famously called the idols of the mind. And our little thought experiment really kicks off from there. What if, toward the end of his life, he decided to turn that powerful analytical method inward? What if he had this huge realization that to truly know the world, you first have to investigate the very thing that's doing the knowing, your own consciousness? And this is the first and maybe the most fundamental insight from our imaginary guide. The whole idea is that we make this one huge mistake. We confuse consciousness with all this stuff inside of it. So Bacon, he might have argued that consciousness is kind of like the stage, just the empty space. And all our thoughts, our feelings, our sensations, well, they're just the play that's unfolding on that stage. They show up in consciousness, sure, but they aren't consciousness itself. And this quote really nails the point by flipping Descartes on his head. We've all heard, I think, therefore I am, right? Well, in our version of the story, Bacon would have said, hold on, that's not quite right. He might have argued that awareness is way more fundamental than thinking. See, you are aware of your thoughts, which means you can't be your thoughts. You have to be the awareness they're happening in. It's a subtle shift, I know, but it's an absolute game changer. Okay, so how in the world would you even investigate this stage of awareness? Well, our imaginary guide lays out a whole new kind of experiment, something we're going to call the method of pure noticing. And the best part, the laboratory for this, it isn't some building with a bunch of test tubes. It's your own mind. It's right here, right now. And the method itself sounds almost too simple. First, you just sit. You watch your thoughts as they show up and then drift away, kind of like clouds passing in the sky. You don't grab onto them, you don't fight them, you just watch. And you do the same for all your bodily sensations and emotions. But then comes the big move. You ask this really sharp question. What is it that's observing all this? And this leads to the first really startling discovery. Because when you actually look for the I that's doing the observing, you can't find it. It's not a thought. It's not a feeling. It's not some little person sitting behind your eyes. The observer just can't be found as another object that you can observe. And yet, something is obviously observing, right? The presence of it is undeniable, even though you can't pin it down anywhere. So as our hypothetical Bacon digs deeper into this, he figures out why we can't seem to see consciousness directly. It's because of a whole new set of illusions. You remember his idols of the mind that mess up how we see the world? Well, he might have called these the idols of the mirror. And the reason is simple. They make us look for consciousness as if it's a reflection in the mirror, instead of realizing it's the mirror itself. All right, the first illusion is what he calls the idol of substance. This is our default assumption that consciousness has to be a thing. We're always asking, is it in the brain? Is it physical? But Bacon would say, nope, you're asking the wrong questions entirely. It's kind of like asking, what color is Wednesday? The question just doesn't make sense. Consciousness isn't an object in space. It's more like the space where all the objects show up. Next up is the idol of possession. I mean, think about how we talk. We say my consciousness, right? As if it's something we own, like my car or my hand. But Bacon would turn right around and ask, okay, but who is this I that's doing the owning? And when you actually look for that I, you discover it's just another thought. It's just another actor that walks out onto the stage. The punchline is, you don't have awareness. You are awareness. Now this third one, this one is maybe the most radical. It's the idol of separation. This is that deep, deep feeling we all have that our consciousness is totally private, that it's locked away inside our skulls, and that it's completely separate from everyone else's. But this whole thought experiment, it challenges that head on. It basically says, that's a massive assumption we've all been making, but have we ever actually proven it? And finally, we have the idol of time. We just assume that we were born, our consciousness switched on, and one day it'll switch off. Simple. But look a little closer. The past and the future, where do they exist? They only ever exist as thoughts or memories happening right now. The actual now, where everything is experienced, that now never changes. It's always now. And here's the shocking idea. Time isn't the container for consciousness. Consciousness is the container for time. So once you start to see through these four big illusions, that consciousness isn't a thing, that you don't own it, that it's not separate, and that it's not really in time, well, once they start to crumble, something truly breathtaking starts to emerge, a new hypothesis. And it might just be Bacon's most massive, most speculative idea of them all. I mean, this is how we normally think of ourselves, isn't it? I'm me, over here. You're you, over there. We're all separate individuals. You can think of it like we're all just distinct waves on the ocean. Our lives are pretty temporary. We rise up for a little while, and then we crash back down into, well, nothing. But what if that's not the full picture? What if being an individual isn't the deepest truth about who we are? Our imaginary Bacon might have proposed this. What if you are not the wave, but the entire ocean that's just temporarily expressing itself as a wave? What if there aren't billions of separate little consciousnesses running around, but just one, single, universal consciousness that's experiencing itself from billions of unique points of view? Now look, I know this sounds pretty wild, and our hypothetical guide would know that too, so it offers up some, let's call it circumstantial evidence. First, just the basic quality of being aware. It feels pretty much the same for you as it does for me. Second, think about empathy. How could we actually feel what someone else is feeling if we were totally separate and sealed off? And third, you've got the consistent testimony of mystics and contemplatives from every tradition all across history who all basically report the exact same thing. This sense of their personal boundaries dissolving into one big unified whole. So what does any of this mean for us, 400 years later? Well, this imagined manuscript isn't just some dusty old historical what if. It's more like a user's manual for a personal investigation. Its real legacy isn't some theory you're supposed to believe. It's an experiment that you're invited to conduct for yourself. You can almost imagine the final entry in this lost journal reading something like this, a thought that a man like Bacon might have had in his last days. For him, death wouldn't be just an end. It would be the ultimate experiment. It's this incredibly courageous commitment to staying aware, to observing, right up to the very, very edge of existence itself. And that, of course, brings it all right back to you. This whole thought experiment is really just pointing to one thing. The greatest laboratory you could ever want is always open, and the main instrument of knowing is always with you. The Luminous Glass isn't just a story about the past, it's an invitation for right now. So the final question it leaves us with isn't really about what Bacon might have discovered, it's about what you will discover.